Hi, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get started. All right. Today, we're going to be talking about zines and social justice. Before we start off, I wanted to do a land acknowledgement. UC San Diego holds great respect for the land and original people of the area where our campus is located. The university was built on the unceded territory of the Kumeyaay Nation. Today, the Kumeyaay people continue to maintain their political sovereignty and cultural traditions as vital members of the San Diego community. We are honored to share this space with them, and we thank them for their stewardship. This statement was adapted from the UCSD Intertribal Resource Center. On the right, you see an image of what the Kumeyaay lands looked like from 1769 to 2000. If you want to learn more about the Kumeyaay, please go ahead and check out their website at kumeyaay.com. And if you're not currently located on Kumeyaay land, I would highly recommend for you to check out that other website, native-land.ca. You just type in your zip code and it'll tell you what Indigenous territories you are occupying. So now for some introductions. My name is Camila. I use any pronouns. I'm a second year here at UCSD. I'm a sociology major, and I'm one of the Joy de la Cruz art and activism interns. All right, now to dive into today's content. First, we're going to talk about what exactly a zine is. Then we're going to move on and talk about why they're important, especially in social justice movements. Then we're going to move on and talk about the origins of zines, where they began. And we're also going to watch a short video on how zines are used in social justice spaces. And then we're going to move on and look at some examples from students, artists, and activists. And we'll finish off with a tutorial. So I'm really excited for that. So stick around to the end and then you'll get to make your own zine. So what's a zine? A zine is short for magazine, or in reference to a mini magazine. A zine is a self-published and non-commercial compilation of original or appropriated texts or images. Usually they are distributed via photocopy. And it can be hard to define a zine, but they're a mashup of art, poetry, literally anything you can think of. It's totally up to you. And they're super cool. You can use them to express yourself. You can use them for a variety of things, and we'll get into that in the next few slides. So why are zines important, and why do we use them in social justice spaces? So zines are independent platforms of expressions. And what does that mean? That means that they're platforms for marginalized voices and outlets for content that is not mainstream. So as you can see in the image at the bottom, there's like 3 people, and then the person in the middle is being cut out. Zines kind of go around publishing companies. They get rid of the publishing companies. A lot of times marginalized voices, so Black, Indigenous, people of color, people that don't have a lot of economic resources, they get shut down by publishing companies, or whatever they wanted to express gets highly edited. And so when people publish zines, it's a way for them to go around those capitalist oppressive systems. And zines a lot of times handle topics that are not mainstream. They're a little bit more niche, more risque. And so zines are a great way of getting that information out there. Another really important part of zines and why they're used so often in social justice spaces is that they're accessible and affordable. You don't need a lot of resources to make a zine. Like today, we're just going to be using a piece of paper, some scissors, and a pen. And like I said, they can be distributed for cheap. Normally zines are photocopied, and that's what makes them so easy to distribute. The top 2 images you can see, those are photocopies of previous zines that have been made. So where did zines originate? So if we look back to the 1920s during the suffragist movement, gave out pamphlets. They were known as pamphleteers. And the pamphlets had a variety of images and texts about what exactly the suffragist movement was about. And the point of spreading those pamphlets was to get the point of giving out those pamphlets was to get the information to working class women who normally didn't have time to go out on the street and advocate. They normally had to be working, right? However, I wanted to highlight that the suffragist movement was centered around white middle class women. And oftentimes suffragists they actually refused to work with Black and Indigenous women of color. And despite these shortcomings, the pamphleteers of the suffragist movement helped prove that small pamphlets that were earlier versions of what we now know as zines were really useful ways of spreading information. But the first actual zines were originated in 80s and 90s punk culture. So 80s and 90s punk culture was all about challenging social norms. It was about anarchy and challenging the status quo. And there was a general disdain for authority as well. And 90s punk culture was made up of musicians, creatives, poets, artists, activists, a whole variety of people. And they used zines to spread information within each other. And that looked anything like a band review, reading a band, or it could be even a cartoon, or it could be some sort of controversial opinion. So the two zines you see on the right are very popular zines from 80s and 90s punk culture. The first one says, "Warning, Alaska's only alternative, 1984, year of the war." And the one all the way on the right says, "If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stomping on a human face forever." So those are examples of really like very punk culture, challenging the status quo, like I said, examples of zines. Another really important movement in the development of zine culture was the Riot Grrrl movement. And the Riot Grrrl movement emerged as a way for women and girls to reclaim their space in punk culture. The punk movement had become very male and white dominated. And so the Riot Grrrl movement was kind of a response to that. It was a way for them not only to reclaim their space and express themselves, but also to challenge the status quo. So you can see here a few examples of zines. The first one says Girl Scout Gone Bad. And the second one is an example of like a Riot Grrrl cover. And it says, "Riot Grrrl is a free weekly mini zine. Please read and distribute to your pals." However, the Riot Grrrl movement was known for being a largely white feminist movement. However, there were still a lot of Black zinesters that addressed the intersections of race and gender and talked about their experiences of Black women. One of those women created the zine you see here on the right. And it says, "Have you seen me? What degenerate created this abortion?" And the name of that zine is called Gunk. So if you look that up, you can read and look at all her zines. And actually on our Instagram, we just made a blog post about the Riot Grrrl movement, which I highly recommend for you all to read. It's super interesting. It's on our Instagram page, which is at UCSD Cross Cultural Center. All right, now I want to show you all a video on the history of activism through zines, specifically about the Riot Grrrl movement. It's about 5 minutes long. Time.
Riot Grrrl, to me, is about us girls taking over the means of production together to create and recreate actions and images which actively challenge the status quo in our lives, to utilize the means of production accessible to us in a manner which challenges dominant standards of professionalism, One of the common misconceptions of Riot Girl is that it only consisted of a small group of white, middle-class, college-educated, cisgendered females, girls, and both Cece and my experiences in the Bay Area and LA were really diverse.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really my experience as being fully, certainly not like a straight girl scene. For me, it was one of the first ways that I accessed any kind of queer culture.
Most of the time, life outside of my mind in my house is totally crazy. It's like playing Hot Lava, and I think, fuck, are we really still playing Hot Lava? Still? Do I really have to jump from the couch to the bookshelf to the piano bench and back without touching the carpet?
Ashley and I try to work together to select scenes that really represent all the different topics that are addressed. For example, we have zines that are written by sex workers talking about sex work. We have fanzines that are talking about being of color in the punk scene. We have fanzines that talk about mental illness, fat activism. So it was important for us to really, you see kind of like how the politics of Riot Girl really kind of touched on a range of different social issues.
The title of the zine is derived from a schoolyard game by the same name. The game was to say Chinese, Japanese, Indian chief, and to look like each of these groups. When you said Chinese, you'd use your hands to stretch your eyes out and upwards. When you said Japanese, you'd stretch your eyes out and downward. And when you said Indian chief, you'd put your hand behind your head and spread out your fingers to resemble a headdress. But the real game was to slowly kill all people of color by fostering white superiority and internalized racism into young children in a playful, acceptable form. This zine is about telling the truth from many different perspectives. Chinese, Japanese, Indian chief. We're not playing that game anymore.
Throughout the 90s, I published something called Outpunk, which was a fanzine as well as a record label devoted to LGBT music, queer punk, both here in San Francisco in the United States and abroad. Zines facilitated a type of expression that I didn't know existed anywhere else.
Some Riot Girl zines that I can remember that really changed things for me. Well, the biggest one for me was I'm So Fucking Beautiful by Nomi Lamb, who's actually a San Francisco person. But her work, it just changed things for me to see this queer feminist approach around bodies and representation and access and also just contributing to feminism in a way that, as someone in my 20s, it seemed like something that was done by people who are older than me. So Riot Girl was really influential in giving me permission to contribute and make art as opposed to just consuming it.
And she wonders if they comprehend the importance of what she is doing. Not just her, but everyone who is out there in some dark corner desperately trying to find their voice, aching to be heard by others. Is anyone out there? Because sometimes it seems that no one's listening. They're nodding their heads and acting like they get it, but nothing changes.
It's interesting to think about Riot Girl as coming out of, it doesn't come from nowhere, right? And you don't want to only credit it as coming out of, as a resistance to a white boy punk scene, that it actually has roots in feminism and queer activism that are not just response to the quote-unquote mainstream of punk rock, you know?
I think that all things are related: race, class, gender, able-bodiedness, age, and size. It's important to notice who the worker is behind the apron, just as it is important to notice who the person is behind the color of their skin.
Riot Girl is love, listening, changing, undefinable, with time to be intimate without fear of anyone laughing at me. Riot Girl meetings are a place for me to deal with my own homophobia, racism, self-esteem, communication, arrogance, craziness, talking, listening, feeling, changing, acting.
All right. So this video really showed us how influential the Riot Grrrl scene was, and how zines really impacted queer and feminist culture. All right, before we get into the tutorial section, I wanted to show you all a few different examples of what your zine could look like. There's a lot of different ways to make zines. You can make them physically with paper, or you can make them digitally, so on Canva, for example. The first zine I wanted to show you was Under Western Eyes. This one is from the Chapman University Digital Commons. There's a lot of different zine databases out there. Different universities have them, so I would highly recommend for you to do a quick Google search and find those. So this one's called Under Western Eyes, and this one is largely like doodles and quotes. You can see here there's a quote by Malala Yousafzai, and there's a few images here. Here's a quote by Amanda Stenberg. And there's some poetry here as well. And at the end, there's some doodles. So I just wanted to show you that this is what your zine could potentially look like. Another zine is The Beauty Myth. This one's also from the Chapman University Digital Commons. This one is more collage-like. A lot of zinesters collage a lot, but you don't need to do that if you don't want to. If you have those materials accessible to you, that's great. Feel free to use those. So this one is about the beauty myth, and it talks about beauty standards for women. I'll show you, scroll through a little bit more. There's a few quotes here. A lot of collaging for the most part, though. And she even has her sources here, it looks like. And another zine I wanted to show you all was the zine that I made for one of my classes last quarter, called Confronting Colonialism. And this is an example of a digital zine. You can put a lot more content into it, and so I have like a description at the beginning. I have some drawings that I made and some quotes from readings that we had to do, as well as explanations. And so digitally, you have a lot more freedom to edit it however you want. So I did this in Canva. So if you have that available to you, I would highly recommend it. This zine is actually in a folder that you will all be able to upload your zines to. And I'm actually going to drop these links into the chat for everyone to look at if you want to look at them while you're making your zines, if you need some inspiration. And I'll drop the link to the Google Drive where you can post your zine when you're done. All right, so now for the tutorial part. So the first step in making a zine, and is probably the most difficult step, is to pick a topic. And since today we're talking about social justice and zines and how zines are used in social justice spaces, I thought that I would have a guiding question for everyone. Obviously, if you don't want to use it, don't feel like you have to use it. But I know it's difficult to come up with a topic or a theme sometimes. So a guiding question to help your thinking today is, what social justice topic are you most passionate about? Once you've decided on a topic, you can go ahead and pick a title. This, again, there's no rules to it. You can do it however you want. If you don't want it to have a title, then don't give it a title. It's all up to you. And next, we need to get our materials. So I'm sure you all saw the material list on the flyer, but if not, I remind you all again, I'll give you a minute to go grab those things if you don't have them readily available. But you're going to need an 8 by 10 inch piece of printer paper. It doesn't have to be printer paper. Today, I'm actually just going to be using regular line paper. So whatever piece of paper you have available to you is fine. A pen, a pencil, a marker, whatever you have, and some scissors. All right, those are the 3 things that you're going to need: paper, writing utensils, and scissors. If you have magazines and glue and tape, or if you want to use color pencils or color markers, feel free to do that as well. There's no rules. And then once we got our materials, we can put it all together. We can doodle, write, poetry, journal, collage, anything you want. And then once you're done making it, I put the link in the chat, but I also put a QR code here if you want to scan it. You can take a picture of your zine or scan it and then upload it to that drive. We're going to send out an email after this workshop with the link to upload again, so don't feel pressured to finish it now. I know we don't have a lot of time with each other right now. So I'm actually going to show you a quick video. It's about a 2-minute video on how to make a zine. So you all don't feel like you're being thrown in the dark, the deep end. So I'll show you that and then we'll go back to this slide.
Hey y'all, I've been making these little mini zines for my son Owen for his lunches. And some of you asked how I'm doing these. It's actually really easy. Find out more about zines in this really great book. I love this thing. And there's an exercise in here about how to make a no staple zine. So that's what we're gonna do today. Just take a piece of paper, just a piece of typing paper, fold it over once, and fold it over one more time. And then I like to use this little handy bone folder to make the creases real sharp. And then you fold it over one more time. Just like this. So then what I do is I unfold it like this. Fold it lengthwise. And this part right here, just very carefully, if you stick your finger on the edge here, you can just kind of tear. You just want to tear this one panel right down the middle, just like this. And when that's torn to the edge there, unfold it again, and looking like this, push it this way, fold it down, fold the edges down with your finger or with the bone folder. And then you've got this nice little booklet. And that's all she wrote. So once you have your booklet, you can fill it with whatever you want. And once you make the booklet, what's kind of cool is that you can then unfold it, stick it on a photocopier, and then you can make as many copies as you'd like. Anyway, happy zine making.
All right, so I'm going to go over that process again in case you weren't keeping up with the video. I've actually made a few different zines. I have one here, so you'll know what the end product will look like. This one is called My Gender, and it's a little zine about my thoughts on gender and what my gender means to me. So on the first page, it's a performance, and I drew some curtains and a little heel in the middle. And then on the next page, I wrote, it's fun and fluid. And then I drew a person that has a lot of makeup on, just like I do today. And I actually put some magazine cutouts of water. Then on the next page, I wrote, it breaks barriers in boxes. And so I put like a little checklist that says male or female, and then a little arrow that says neither. And I have a box with an arrow through it, you know, pretty self-explanatory. The next page says, and it's my business. And then I have a little person over here reading the newspaper, minding their business. And then the last 2 pages of my zine, at the top it says, if I were the only person on earth, I would simply experience the world as human, not as a woman or as a man. And then I have a little cutout from a magazine and a little person by themselves. And at the end, I drew myself with my brain, and there was flowers growing out of my head, and it says, I am me. So this is roughly what your zines will look like at the end of this process. And so now that you know kind of what it's going to look like at the end, we can go over it again. We have like half an hour left for you all to work. And so in the meantime, I'm going to angle my screen down. Can you all type in the chat to let me know if that's a good angle or not? And then I'm going to go over the process again. And then once I'm done going over the process, I'll put some lo-fi music and we can all work together. Let's see, what does the chat say? All right, okay, so you can see me, great. All right, so everyone has their piece of paper out. So once you have your paper, we're gonna fold it in half, hot dog style, like this. It's gonna look like this. And now we're gonna fold it hamburger style. All right, so we'll do hamburger style. It's gonna look like this, and then we're gonna fold it hamburger style one more time. Gonna flatten out those edges. And so I'm gonna unfold it now, and I should have 8 different panels. All right, 8 different ones. So you should be able to see all 8 creases, and I'm gonna fold it hamburger style. I'm getting confused between hamburger and hot dog. So hamburger style, so it looks like this. And now we're gonna need our scissors, all right? So once you have your scissors, we're gonna cut from this top line all the way to the middle line, all right? So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So once you cut it, it should look like this. And we're gonna unfold it. And you want the hole in the paper to be facing the top, all right? So I'm gonna fold it hot dog style again, and I'm gonna kind of squeeze it towards the middle so it looks like there's a cube in the middle. And once you do that, you can kind of see it come together, and you can fold the pages. I'm gonna fold it. Look at that. And now I have a little mini zine that I can fill out. There should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages, and then your front and your back cover. So far, I'm like halfway through with mine. I decided to do mine on art and social justice. That's what it looks like so far. I wrote a little poem. I've been doodling a little bit. I decided to whip out the magazines and do some collaging. For this little page, I'm trying to collage a mural. So we'll see how that goes. If you have a magazine, collaging is really fun. So that's great. Let me know how, and I would highly recommend for you to upload your zine if you finished it already, or whenever you finish it, to upload it to the Google Drive. I would really love to see all the work that you all did. if you want to take a quick peek at mine, this is how mine came out. This is how the mural came out. It's a little messy, but I'm okay with it. So yeah, thank you so much for being here, and that about wraps it up for today.